Happy Friday, everybody. V0 has just announced they have released an AI model. You can tap into it. It includes specialized web dev knowledge, OpenAI compatible API, and you can use it in Cursor, Codex, or in your own app. As of yesterday, May 21st, 2025, it is now in beta in the API, the AI SDK, or inside of the AI playground. Today, we are going to be using the new model that was just released from V0, answering the question, how difficult is it to update the Vercel Chat SDK to use the new V0 model? I'm going to be working, this is going to be a series of videos for me to build M0, which is a V0 for musicians, to make it so that musicians can easily, actually I shared it right here, so let me just, we're going to be going live to build out V0 for musicians so that the context includes your latest social media posts, the music that you've released, as well as the bios, followers, etc. from your social media profiles. So that when you go over to V0, it doesn't have that info. It doesn't know what music you're working on. And so if you're a musician and you want it to have all the context of you before it goes and builds out your app, V0 does not have that. We're building M0, which is going to be V0 for musicians, hyper-focused on the niche of musicians, making it so that musicians can use one prompt to go from an idea to interactive visuals for their album, for their show, for their collaboration. Whatever you're doing, using V0 is a dynamic way to create experiences. So we'll start with what's new. We'll go into a demonstration on what V0 is. Then we'll go into a guide on how to update the Vercel Chat SDK repo, the template, with the new V0 model. And then finally, we'll go into enabling, talking about artifacts, talking about tools, talking about deploying to Vercel. I'm going to be, again, chopping this up into multiple different videos. So in this first video, we're just focused on getting the model in. And with that, let's start with what's new. So this, again, came out technically 2 days ago on the 21st. Today's the 23rd. We're releasing V0's AI model. It's a specialized web dev knowledge. It includes OpenAI compatible API. You can use it inside of Cursor, Codex, or in your own app. And it's now available inside of the API, AI SDK, or the AI playground. So they've got more info here. We'll open up their official announcement post. But you can see that it's multimodal, so it allows you to send in text and image for the inputs. It's got 128K total context for tokens, 32,000 output context. It costs $3 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens. And so the sections of this, it starts with the features. We've already talked about the features. The getting started section, this is going to be where we're going to get started today. Example usage, models, API reference. So if you want to directly hit the API, you can. We will be using Vercel's AI SDK inside of this video. They've got example requests, examples with streaming, usage limits, and then they've got examples for integrating it with Cursor and with the OpenAI Codex CLI. If you want to use those, I've already found that there's a couple other videos that have been released on how to use the new V0 model inside of Cursor and inside of OpenAI's Codex. Inside of this video, we will specifically be updating the mini chat app that I've built. I believe it's at minichat.sdk.vercel.app. This is right now using Grok. So it's great for general queries, but it's not good for creating ideas. Build me a web page for my new album. If we send something like build me a web page for my new album, it needs information like what do you want to include in the page, album name, artist, title, track, cover, release date, all the info you mentioned. And so this is using Grok. Thanks for providing the location details. How can I assist you further with this information? So right now it's not doing much. It's not building me a web page. It's using Grok. And so I want to update this so that it's using new V0 model, so that way we can build apps very quickly and easily. And so the musician can just come into a chat and say, I'm dropping an album. Help me create the marketing content. Help me visualize the number of followers I have across all my platforms. Whatever it is you want to do, you can use this M0 to be able to generate engaging visual content, engaging experiences that you can deploy on your own domain so that musicians have a tool that works for them. And so we've gone through the announcement. This came out 2 days ago. It's a brand new model. Anybody can access it. It's in beta mode. Let's go into a quick demonstration. I demonstrated the app that we will be updating, but let's do a quick demonstration of V0. If you're not familiar with V0, you can go from prompt to app. And so I can say, let me actually use that same prompt and see how it works. Before we tested it with Grok. Now let's show what happens if we say it inside of V0. So this is using the V0 model, which we will be using inside of this video. You can see that before, when we used Grok, it followed up and it said, hey, I need some, give me more details on the web page that you want to create. In V0, it immediately starts generating, and it's now generating that text right out the gate. And so you can see that it's a little bit more intuitive to use. I just give a more general prompt. It writes all the code that I need to use. And then once it's finished writing the code, I can preview the code right here inside of V0. So there's a lot in here that's going to take a little bit of time to recreate. I'm breaking this down into a few steps. The steps that I'm visualizing for all of the videos that I'll be creating are, in this video, updating the model to V0 so that way we can verify that the new model works. Second, I want to add in Recoup APIs. That way it has the context of what are my social profiles, what are my latest posts, what type of musician am I, all of that. I want to add on a button to deploy to Vercel, and I also want to add in artifacts. The deploy to Vercel button is going to be this deploy up here. That way, whatever the app is that you create, you have a one-click button where you can deploy it, host it onto your own site, connect your own domain, everything that you normally get when building on top of Vercel. And then artifacts, I want to add in this preview section as well. That way, you don't just sit there looking at code. This is what we're going to have initially, is it's just going to look like the individual files. And what we're going to get with artifacts is that we can actually preview the page and see it right here and be able to interact with this new page that we built before we actually deploy it. So we've gone into the demo. We've talked a high-level overview on what is this new V0 model. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's start updating the mini chat to use the new V0 model. To build this out, I've already built a new project called M0. And so I'm going to start by cloning this locally and see if I can build it out. I'll cd ... cd, and now from here, I'll get clone and I'll paste this repo. This is just a fork of Vercel's Chat SDK. It's Vercel's Chat SDK, and I removed some of the dependencies for databases like Postgres and Redis. That way it's easier and faster to prototype new things without worrying about storing the messages for later. Okay, so we've got M0 here. I've cloned it locally. I'm going to change directory into M0, and now let's open it up inside of our IDE. And once our IDE opens, let's try installing the packages and getting it running locally, pnpm I. And then once the packages are installed, we'll use pnpm dev to run the repository. Basic structure of this application, it has one route and one route only, and that is for the chat page. Inside of the chat page, it is loading a chat component, and the chat component includes the input for the chat, as well as the messages for the chat. We can view those inside of components. We've got the chat, and inside of this chat, it's using the use chat hook from Vercel AI SDK. And then it has a chat header, messages, multimodal input, and that is the front end side. All of the power comes from the use chat hook, and the use chat hook hits the backend API in the chat folder, API chat route. And inside of this route, you can see how we're streaming the text. We are getting our input from the request body where we can get the JSON, which includes the messages that are being passed in. After that, we then stream a response using our provider with language models. And right now our provider is all Grok. We can verify that by going into my provider, which is imported right here. And then the model we're using is from XAI. And so the first change that we're going to be making in this video is going to be to update this. Instead of using XAI, we're going to be swapping it over to use Vercel. Let me see where we're at. We've already installed our packages, so let's try running this locally with pnpm dev. Pnpm dev is going to start up our local server. That way we can access and see the site that we have on localhost 3000. Let's open it up, see how it looks. I anticipate this will not work because I have not added in my Grok environment variable. And so what I'm going to briefly do off camera is I'm going to go to Grok's website and I'm going to get my API key. I actually think I've already got it in a different repo. So I'm going to go over to Vercel and find where I've got this key already saved inside of a different project. Okay, and so now we've got the app loading locally. This project is not inside of Recoupable. It's inside of my personal projects, mini chat. Let me verify that it's not working. Let's just do one of the prompts, write code. And we should just see an error because we don't have any API key for Grok. Yeah, so it didn't reply. So let's fix that. We can fix that by copying our env example and renaming it .env.local. And all that we need is an XAPI key. So I'm going to stop sharing screen for 1 second so that I can add in that environment variable. Stop sharing. I'm going to copy the value of my environment variable that I need. Paste that into my env local file. Save that file, close it so that nobody else is going to see it. And now I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so now that we've added in our environment variable for the XAI key, let's try using this chat again. Now we see and now we see output. So now we've got this working, which is great, but it's not using V0. And that is the main thing that we want to add here. So let's see how long it takes for us to add V0. The main question that I have personally, I've never used this new V0 model. And the question in my mind is how difficult is it to update the Vercel Chat SDK to use the new model? So let's jump back into the docs for V0 and let's see what we have to do. It looks like we should just need to run these steps. I'll open up a new tab and say pnpmi. I'll get rid of this install keyword. And we'll install both of those two packages, the AI package and the Vercel package. And now, inside of our generate text, we should be able to. And so we'll update the model API route. Again, it's /API/chat. And inside of here, we're using a model. And right now, we've got this config for a provider. And I actually don't know that I have a reason to use this provider. I think I want to get rid of it and keep it simpler. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff and I don't think I care to use it. So what I'm actually going to do is just update the model here with Vercel. And from this, hopefully we get auto prompted to import. I'm not getting prompted to import it yet. So let's try manually importing it. Like so. We should now have Vercel in here. And after that, it should be all we need to do. We might be missing an environment variable for Vercel, but they haven't mentioned it so far in the docs. Let me check env. No. But I do see a bearer token later on. And so I think we need to set V0 API key to a value, but let's just see if it works. Let's refresh our local repo and let's see if we say, please, let's use the same task. This is going to be our benchmark. Build me a web page for my new album. We'll use this for all the tests that we're doing to verify the output that we're getting. And it looks like we got some errors. I got an error, Redis URL environment variable is not set. We shouldn't need Redis, so let me try to figure out where that's at. I don't see it anywhere. So I'm confused as to what is throwing Redis URL. Environment variable is not set. get Redis URL. Where's this coming from? I have a feeling we just need to set the Vercel AI API key. So I'm going to try setting Vercel a v0 API key. First, I'll add it into my env example file. Equals *****. Hashtag get your v0 API key here. And we can link to where we actually get that API key. If I just look up key, you get the key here. And so let's click on that link, go to our keys. And so this is where we'll get our key. Again, I'm going to stop sharing so that I can generate a new key. But this is how you create a key. I'll briefly stop sharing. I'll get my key and then I'll start sharing again. Stop sharing. Delete M0 prototype. Create that API key. I've got my API key. I'll take that back into my env local. And let me just get the title, the key of that API key. And now I've got my new environment variable saved. I've closed the file. Let me go back to sharing my screen so that you can see what we're doing. Okay, I've added in my v0 API key. Actually, I think I left my API key open, so let me stop sharing one more time. Okay. Now I've updated it. You can't see my API key here, but this is where I created my API key. I've added it into my env local file. And now let's see if it works better now that I've added a Vercel API key. Not seeing anything here. Now I just want to get a response out of this. Okay, so it looks like I'm getting errors around Redis URL environment variable is not set. I would not have expected to have needed Redis, but because I've removed Redis from this repo. And it's not saying we have Redis anywhere here other than inside of our package.json. So the question in my mind now is, do I need a Redis URL in order to get this to work? If yes, let me just try to get a Redis URL. I would get that, I think, by going over to Vercel into my own projects, and I should have some Redis instances that I can take advantage of. Once I'm here, let's go into storage. And let's find a Redis instance that I can take a key from. I don't see any Redis instances in here, so let's create a new one. Let's use Redis, continue, accept. And I want to do whatever is free, which is this one. Let's create it. I wasn't expecting to use Redis, so this is not something I wanted to do. And then here's our Redis URL. So I'm going to show this secret, and I'm going to copy this into my env file. I'll stop sharing one more time. Let's show the secret, copy the env variable. I go back to my .env.local, paste that URL, close out of my env local, go back to hiding secrets, and now I can share my screen again. Share screen, share the correct screen. Let's see if the v0 model is working now. I've just updated to include the Redis URL, and we can see we've already reloaded our env. Let's try it again to see if it works. Didn't get anything, no errors, but also no response. Let's try this again. We're getting a 200 response. We're getting an error, post message on execute. So not entirely sure why this isn't working right now. Hi. So far I have not been able to get the V0 model to work. Let me see if it works if I can simplify it a little bit by just doing this simple text. Let's try getting it by doing something up here. Let's just console log the text. Let's see if we actually get text out from this. We're using exactly their example inside of our chat API. Let's try sending another message and see if we now see inside of our logs a successful response from V0. Okay, no responses returned from your route handler. Okay, so now we're not getting any sort of response returned. We are using response down here, but for some reason it's not using it. So the question in my head is, what am I doing wrong? Maybe I need to crash the server. Let's try doing a full restart, start it up again with pnpm dev and see if this fixes it. I also might want to try it inside of an incognito tab because I have found that I've been having some issues with my main browser for Next.js applications. So let's try incognito tab, going to localhost. If this doesn't work, I'm going to try seeing if they have an official quick start, because maybe my versions of AI SDK are out of date. Let's try this write code again. We got the thinking, and then it just stops. Okay. One more try. What I'm going to try to do is wrap this in a try catch. Let's save that and let's try it again just on our normal browser. Seems like we got the same response. Going incognito did not change anything. Writing code again. Okay, here's what I'm missing. It should be Vercel API key as an environment variable, and that is what I'm missing. I have it saved incorrectly. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to change my environment variable. Instead of Vercel API key, or instead of V0 API key, I'm going to change it to say Vercel API key. Let's verify in here. I've got it saying V0 API key. It needs to say Vercel API key. So I'll do a quick stop to change that environment variable name on my screen share. And once I do, stop the share, go into my env local, change the name, save the file. That should be it. Let's add my screen share back in. Okay, let's try this again. env variables have already reloaded. Let's try it again with hi. We got thinking, and we still don't have an output. So, okay, so it looks like my billing plan needs to be updated in order to use my API key. So far, I've been on the free plan of V0 of Vercel. I wanted to stay at the free plan, but it seems I now need to update. So let me add in a payment method. I don't think I have a payment method here, so I'm going to need to get my phone so that I can get those details. My phone was already right here. Okay. Bring my charging cable around here. All right, yeah, so I got to put in a new payment card. Once I get that info up, I'll type in my payment details and get a card saved in. Sent an email. Let's go to. So far, the blockers that we've had are the env name was not included in the docs. We also need to update our Vercel plan. to be on team or premium. So these were the blockers that we've hit so far. We needed a correct DNV name, and we now need to update our plan. And I am getting my card info so that way I can do a subscription. Vercel finally got me to entering in some credit card details. I've been using Vercel for years, and I've always been on their free tier, and I've never wanted to spend money on Vercel, but it's a tool that I use for everything. And if that's going to be a blocker for me using their tools, I will happily give them that info. So I'm going to stop sharing again. And now that I've stopped sharing, I see my credit card details. And so let me enter those in. Change the country to the US of A. All right, got my payment method added in. Okay. And so we're still on the free plan. Let me view all the plans. And I think I need to go up to premium is what it said. Oh yeah, let me go back to sharing screen. So it says I need premium or team plan required to access the V0 API. So I'm going to go ahead and update to premium. Now I'm on the premium plan. And so let's try it again now that I'm on the premium plan. Let's refresh. Hi. We get thinking text. And we still don't get a response. Premium or team plan required to access the API. I just updated, so I should be on. Oh, there we go. Yep. Go ahead and confirm. Okay, now I should be on the premium plan. Looks like now I'm on the premium plan. So let's do it again. Refresh the page. Check it out. Let's try hi. We get thinking text. It's thinking a little bit longer this time, making me feel optimistic. I have a feeling we're actually going to get a response this time. It's staying thinking. We should see first a response here from the hard-coded prompt that we've got with V0. And then once we get that prompt back, it should then stream text on our web page if we've got it all plugged together right. Still thinking, relatively long think time. Very excited to see if this works. Still not seeing a response. It's starting to feel like it's taken too long. But this is also a long, maybe instead of this, create a simple web page. I think I'm going to stop this. And now I'm going to try it again. And actually, I think I can probably get rid of this try catch altogether. And let me just try using the chat interface now that I fixed the ENV variable names as well as my Vercel plan. Let's see if I'm actually able to get a response just in the normal chat. Okay, let's send hi. We got 4 issues. Hopefully none of those actually impact us. Okay. Okay, and now we got a response. Build a simple, well, let me get our benchmark text. Build me a web page for my new album. Build me a web page for my new album. Let's see what it does with. It's going to create a modern responsive website using Next.js and Tailwind. We've got text output with all the code that we're going to need. I think we're now using V0's code. It's interesting how it's updating the parts. We've got like reasoning text down below. And then we also have the output text up above. It looks like the first thing that it wrote was the general page document. And then we've got a music player component that it's built, streaming links, track list. And is it still reasoning? Looks like it's still thinking. We haven't actually finished yet. Okay, it's still writing code. And now we're on to button variants. And then we're on to sliders. To complete your project, you'll need to add a few more lines, create a public folder, add in the missing images that we need, add our dependencies, features of this album website. It's got responsive design, interactive music player, track listing, tour date section, streaming platform links, a modern dark aesthetic. You can customize all the content. And the reasoning is after the output, which is interesting to me. But it seems like we finally got the V0 model to work. And so now we have a simple chatbot that is using V0 under the hood as the AI model, as the LLM model for all of the queries that we're going to send in. Now that we have this working locally, let's try to configure this and deploy it in the cloud. First, let me see what we have changed and push those changes. So in the example, we've got our Vercel API key that we need. Inside of our package.json, we've added the new AI SDK Vercel package. We've updated PnPm lock, and then we updated our route to delete our provider. We've got this commented code that we can delete. And so let me do a tiny bit of cleanup. Before I fully commit this. So let's go into the route. First, let's delete any unused imports, and then let's delete any unused code. Let's check that diff again to see if it's looking a little bit cleaner. Diff is looking much cleaner. So let's push this to say, using the new V0 model. We're going to push straight to main. And let's start hooking this up to Vercel. Let's go to Vercel. We're going to use Vercel to deploy this. So far, we've been building and running this locally. And I've got it here inside of my GitHub account. We can see before it was an hour ago since the last change, and now it should be like a couple of seconds ago because I just did the update. It was just updated now. And it's given me a button like it's pending, like it's doing a Vercel deployment. No, it's just linting. So let's go into Vercel and let's configure this with Vercel so that when we do a push, it will automatically deploy our changes to our new web app, M0. I'd like to be able to get m0.dev. Let's see if that domain is, or m0.vercel.app maybe. Vercel's crashing on me. Let's try it again. All right, Vercel's opening up. Let's add a new project. Taking a little bit of time to load. I think I'm going to crash my local server just to give myself a little bit more bandwidth on my computer. Let's add a new project. Should auto prompt me to import M0. And now I might need to add in the environment variable. I'm not sure if I do. It might automatically be included. So let me just try deploying it without the environment variable. And if it doesn't work, then I'll add in the only environment variable which we'll need to add, which is Vercel API key. I can now get rid of X API key, and let me get rid of some of the other unused files. We have a provider file, which was using this custom provider stuff. And now I don't think we're using this anywhere. We're using it inside of actions for generate title from user message, which is actually not being used anywhere. So we can delete this and then save chat model as a cookie is being used inside of model selector, but I don't think I'm using model selector anywhere. So I should be able to get rid of that. Yeah, let's get rid of model selector, which means that we can now get rid of this save chat, which means I can get rid of this entire actions file. Move it to the trash. Let's go back to our providers. Is anyone using my provider now? Nobody's using it, so now I can delete it. Boop. Okay, we've deleted that. Let's see how our build's going. We're deploying, we're collecting page data. It looks like we've got a successful build and it's going to be live. So I'm going to go ahead and push these changes and say clean up unused LLM provider code from Grok. Okay, now that it's finished, I'll commit, I'll push, and let's see what happens. I'm going to do a quick test to see if this domain is going to work, or if I do need. The question in my head right now, do I need to put in the Vercel API key here, or is it just going to work? Looks like it did not just work out of the box. It looks like I do need to add in my environment variable, and I'll do that by going over to settings, environment variables, and in here, I'm going to put in my Vercel API key. Let me stop sharing briefly so that I can add that in. Stop sharing. I come into my .env.local file, get the value from my v0 API key, paste that, save that, make sure that I close out of my env local file, come back over here, I'll share my screen, share my entire screen. And now we can see that I've added my Vercel API key into my environment variables. And we'll need to trigger another deployment now that we've set those variables. This deployment's not going to cut it. Let's create a new deployment for main. And this is going to make sure that we're using our latest environment variables in the build and deploy step. This build is likely almost done, collecting build traces, so it's just finished the build. This is getting in the last part of our guiding step, where I guide you to go from the Chat SDK from Vercel to update it to use the v0 LLM model, which was just released 2 days ago. I want to see if I can change this name to just m0.vercel.app, because right now it's m06. Let's go to settings, domains. Can I just get m0.vercel.app, or is that already being used? It's already being used. What's another domain that I could get that would be cleaner than our production domain, which is m06? music0.vercel.app, music0. It's like the first place that musicians go to build an app, to put their ideas in. Music v0, musician 0, mu0, ms0, maybe wave 0, or mp3 0, mp3o, Wavo album 0. I'm overthinking it now. Let's try wave 0. So I'll use wave 0 for now. wave0.vercel.app. Now we've got this new domain. How are we doing on our deploy? Let's go back over to deployments. Our latest build is ready. Let's see if it works. Build me a web page for my new song release. It's already working. So now we've got it working. It's going to use Tailwind CSS. It's using all the V0 libraries. It's telling me how I can get started. And then it's telling me the code that we can add and write. And so we're getting now production ready code all written by V0. But unlike V0, we can now customize the usage of Vercel AI SDK. And so we can do these things that I was talking about at the start of the video, including getting your latest social media posts and including those as context so that when it builds your web page, it knows what you've been posting. Getting your released music from Spotify so that when it builds out your page, it doesn't need to ask you for the album art or for the song link. It can just use that info from Spotify. And then the same with your bios, your followers, etc. It can just know your social media links so that it doesn't leave them empty, but it automatically fills them in when you get started. Those are things that we couldn't do with V0. We couldn't build and tell another musician like David or Nana, go onto V0, use this, and it's going to automatically know this. It wouldn't work. Now that we can use the model inside of our own apps, I can build a customized application that is built custom for these musicians' use case. And so what have we done in this video? In this video, we started with just a normal chat app using Vercel AI SDK over here using Grok. It didn't have any real capabilities to build out production grade code for a musician. If you told it to build a web page for a new song, it would ask you questions. We have talked about the new release from V0, looking at the new V0 API that allows us to build fast streaming responses for application building. We then updated the app to actually include V0. And so now you can see we're getting brilliant code output for everything that we're writing. And so now let's talk about where I'm going to go next. I'm going to do a couple more live streams, hopefully today. And so the next things that I want to be adding, I want to add an artifact that will show me the code output so that I don't need to leave here and I can instantly see the web page that's being generated to help me be able to go back and forth. That's going to be artifacts. I think that's going to be first. That way we can see the visual output of the code that's being written. I want the artifact tab just like you have in V0, wherever my V0 app went. How as soon as we start writing, we get this artifact over here where I can test out the website. I want this same artifact style inside of the new wave0.vercel.app. After that, I want to add in tools. I want to use tool calls. The tool calls will be to call the Recoup API, because inside of the Recoup API, we've already got all the tools to be able to get all the social medias associated with an artist, get all the segments that are associated with an artist, get all of the posts for any of the socials that an artist has, use Spotify to search for the artist, use Spotify to get all the albums from an artist, use Spotify to get the top tracks or to look at a specific album to get the tracks from it. We can get your Instagram profile and all your videos, all the comments from your Instagram. We can search for your tweets. We can get the latest trends on Twitter. We can get all the fans inside of any of your segments. We can get all the comments from any posts that you've given us, generate images. This is just the start. We're focusing on the API at Recoup so that way we can build these types of apps very quickly. And so I want to add in these tools so that the new chat that we built at wave0.vercel.app can use these tools to have more context before it builds your app. Who are you? What are you posting? What type of music do you make? That way the apps that you're building are customized to your style. And then finally, I want to add in a deploy to Vercel button. You can already see we've got a deploy to Vercel button up here, but this doesn't actually deploy the code that you've written. So I want to update this button so that the button is hidden, or maybe the button just changes. Maybe the button, if you don't have anything written, deploys this overall application, the Wave Zero app. And if you do have an application built, if you've got code in here, and then you click deploy, it deploys the code that you built. That way, the end goal, where I'm going to be taking us to, is so that I can get on a call next week with David, with Nana, with any musician across South America. I can get on a call with them. I can have them jump into Wave Zero. They don't have to put in any credit card info, and they can build an application and deploy an application without knowing anything about code. And we want to build this for musicians so that when musicians have an idea, ooh, I would love to have this site, and a musician comes into my DM, all the time musicians are coming into my DM and saying, hey, can you help me build this app? I've got this brilliant platform that's going to change the world. I would send them over to V0 before. V0 was okay, but it was not hyper-focused on the music use case. Now, with Wave Zero, we're making it so that this is hyper-focused for musicians. It's a V0 custom-built for musicians. The goal being to make it so that in one prompt, a musician can go from an idea to an interactive visual instantly. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back soon.